Welcome back, everybody, to another TFA Throwdown. He's Kevin Steele. I'm Robby Jeffries. And today we are talking about the two top wide receivers coming off of the draft boards for all your drafts happening last weekend, this weekend, all throughout August. He's got Justin Jefferson. I've got Cooper Kupp. Who should you take first? Kev, I'm going to kick it to you first. Tell us why Justin Jefferson should be the first wide receiver off the board. He's coming off at 106. Cooper Kupp coming off right before him at the 104. Why should people be taking Justin Jefferson first?
So, when you look at Justin Jefferson, he has been fantastic each of the first two seasons he's been in the league. Last year, 167 targets, almost a 30% target share. He was fourth in routes run, first in market share of air yards, first in deep targets, eighth in red zone targets, 108 receptions, 1,600 receiving yards, 10 touchdowns, and 19.4 fantasy points per game. Obviously, this pales in comparison to what Cooper Kupp did last year. Cooper Kupp went absolutely nuclear last year. A wide receiver season like we've almost never seen. He was up there with the top guys like that we see in running backs. Like almost like a Christian McCaffrey type of season last year. And I was all about Cooper Kupp last year. He was the guy that I was pounding the table for, telling everybody to draft him ahead of Robert Woods. But in terms of this year and why I have Justin Jefferson ahead of him. One, I think Kevin O'Connell added into this offense is going to be a big help for this offense in general. I think you see this offense become much more pass heavy. Where last year you had Mike Zimmer, who was stuck in the old ages of the 90s type of way of football. We got to establish the run. We got to play good defense. And that was his kind of MO through the years. And for Justin Jefferson, I just think that he's going to continue to get better. Last year, Minnesota ranked 10th in touchdown rate last year, but Cousins ranks 14th in attempts inside the 10 last year. He was 8th in red zone targets last year, but the 10 touchdowns that he saw, I think that number could go up dramatically than that. I think also what helps him is how much more of a deep threat he is than a guy like Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp's much more of a short intermediate route. Not that Cooper Kupp can't go deep, but he is not the deep threat that Justin Jefferson is. And I think that overall helps them in terms of just being able to put up boom type of production. And, honestly, that was kind of one of their bigger differentiators. Obviously, the 145 receptions that Cooper Kupp last year obviously helped. But other than that, it was about 300 receiving yards less. And obviously the 6 touchdowns were the two biggest differentiators between the two of them. And I just think Justin Jefferson takes another step forward this year. And then as far as Cooper Kupp is concerned, the reason I don't have him there, I have him as my number 2 wide receiver. Matt Stafford elbow injury is definitely something that concerns me. And I also think Allen Robinson is better than any of the wide receivers they had there last year. And I think he is going to be somebody that can take away red zone looks from Cooper Kupp. Those are the two things that are the biggest things that worry me.
Yeah. I think we need to continue to monitor the Stafford elbow situation. It sounds like that he's going to work through it, whether he gets it fully healed or not. So we'll see how much that affects his game. But I think, we just have to go back and remember, again, how good was Cooper Kupp? And people are like, yeah, he broke the record. He was fantastic. He was 6.5 points better on a points per game basis than Justin Jefferson. Like if we can compare that to another Justin Jefferson to Darnell Mooney, wide receiver 23, would be that next 6.5 point gap, right? Like, so he was that much better. But Justin Jefferson was the 4th or 2nd wide receiver. Forget on points per game, but it's incredible, right? So people are going to say, hey, he's going to regress, right? And probably, most likely, it's really hard to repeat a season like that. But let's do that regression math, right? Let's take 20% off of what he did, which is, I think, is being extremely liberal, right? And so if we take 20% off of his totals, Cooper Kupp's stat line goes to 116 receptions, 1,557 yards, and 13 touchdowns. You rattled off some stats at the beginning. That's roughly right there with what Justin Jefferson did, right? That's 350 PPR points compared to Justin Jefferson getting 330 this last year. So still, we regress him by 20%. He's still finishing with over 20 PPR points better than what JJ did. And again, that's being like really liberal with that projection of the regression. So looking at Justin Jefferson's side, again, we're splitting hairs here because I really like the Vikings for this year. I'm really excited about Kevin O'Connell coming there. And so I do think he can take some steps forward. The only issue is if we look at his stats with and without Adam Thielen on the field, I think there's a little bit of nuance there when we look at the touchdown totals and his target totals. Without Adam Thielen on the field, Justin Jefferson had 11.4 targets per game in those 5 games. One of the games, Adam Thielen played like 3 snaps, 4 snaps, something like that. So I'm including that game as a game that he missed. And then in games where They were both on the field, 8.9 targets per game. So he's dropping down 2 targets per game when Adam Thielen's on the field. And then the touchdowns, right? We know Adam Thielen is this red zone monster, right? Justin Jefferson scored 4 times in just the 5 games without Adam Thielen, where he only scored 6 times total with double the amount of games. So only 2 more touchdowns in 11 games compared to the 4 with just 5 games without Adam Thielen. So I think there's a touchdown cap where you say you can see that number going up from 10. Sure, maybe just because they're going to pass more, but not a ton, right? Because I think Adam Thielen's going to be out there. And we got to remember that Irv Smith is also coming back. Tyler Conklin only had 3 touchdowns. Irv Smith, last time we saw him, had 5 touchdowns with just 43 targets in 2020. So he's a big red zone guy as well. So those are just some things to maybe cap that ceiling a bit. So yes, Cooper Kupp will regress. I think we need to look at Allen Robinson and say, hey, he's going to take some targets, but where can those targets come from other than Cooper Kupp? Van Jefferson had knee surgery this offseason. There's nobody else that demands targets in this offense. Why can't both of them feast? And that's my kind of counter argument to the Allen Robinson thing. They're the only 2 people outside of Higbee maybe accumulating targets in this Rams offense. So we like both of these picks, but there's no way I'm going away from the upside that we just saw with Cooper Kupp. We take away 20% and he still beats what Justin Jefferson did last year. That's why Cooper Kupp should be the first wide receiver off the board.
The only thing that I would push back on with Cooper Kupp was last year an outlier season? Because before last year, the most he'd ever put up in a season was 16.9 fantasy points per game. Now, some of that's obviously due to Jared Goff, right? Jared Goff is obviously not the quarterback that Matt Stafford is. So remember, like that 2018, Jared Goff was fantastic. I mean, the guy was an absolute ball. I mean, that offense was one of the best in the league, right? I mean, they were kind of like the greatest show on turf type stuff, right? And so, but I will also say that year is also the year that Cooper Kupp only played in 8 games. But overall, I mean, the highest he's ever finished is wide receiver 7 in fantasy points per game with 16.9. Could the regression be bigger than what we're expecting? It could be. I don't really care so much about the rest of that. But in terms of Adam Thielen and the argument made with him would be, one, he is 32 years old. Injuries have been piling up for him over the last couple of years. And I do think that he's definitely going to have take away some targets inside the red zone. I think that's a valid argument. But overall, I just think Justin Jefferson can get even better than what we've seen. Like the first 2 years he's been in the league, it was 17.1 fantasy points per game and 19.4. Like, I don't think there's anything stopping him from getting better. I think he could grow on this touchdown number. I think throwing the ball more, especially inside the red zone, can help him as well. And so just overall, I just think there's another level to Justin Jefferson that we haven't even seen yet, where Cooper Kupp, this is obviously the best we've ever going to see. You just can't beat that type of year again. I don't know how much like in the middle is he versus what he did. Still fantastic. Absolutely love Cooper Kupp. There's no reason he shouldn't be in the conversation with number 1 wide receiver. Anything else is ridiculous. I think there's a couple other wide receivers like Stephon Diggs and Jamar Chase that enter the conversation as well. But for me, Justin Jefferson, the body of work that he's done, and I just think he just continues to get better. And I just think I like this offense, and I don't have the same question marks with my quarterback and obviously an elbow injury that kind of concerns me. So that's pretty much all I got.
Yeah, pulling up my projections here. I mean, they're really close for me. I think I have them 20 points. Yeah, 22 points separating them over 17 games, right? So that's less than or just over a point a game. So I think they're going to be really close. 2 fantastic picks. I think I'm just going to go with the guy who has the better coach, the better quarterback, in my opinion. Although that's no slight on Kirk Cousins, he's been undervalued for a long time. I think the Vikings are going to have a great season. So guys, let us know who you think won this throwdown. Are you taking Cooper Kupp first? Are you taking Justin Jefferson first? We want to hear from you. So we'll see you guys on the next video.